Hey y'all, welcome to Paige's Perspective, where I help you find your inner strength to cope with life. You may need a journal for this episode because I'm going to go through some questions to help you reflect a little bit. And our podcast has taken a bit of a turn in content as we try to shift more into unequal partnerships and behaviors and digging deeper into the issues that we have with our partners instead of focusing on the addiction. So I want to keep the conversation going just a little bit and how I'm trying to encourage others to shift their perspective from focusing on behaviors instead of substances. I keep seeing comments, posts, all the things that just focus so much on the substance or addiction. I feel like this is something I really need to hit on as much as possible because it's going to help you grow. It's what's going to help you live the life you want to live. And people don't believe me when I say it isn't the substance you have an issue with. And I get it. We've been conditioned as a society to focus on substances. And I'm going to get into that in a sec, but the issues are just so much deeper than that. And sometimes people don't realize it until they have experienced it. But if I can help shift a perspective or two so that you can build up your self-esteem to live a life based on your values, I'm going to keep talking about it. Now, that doesn't mean that you completely focus on your partner and what the hell they're doing. It's really about focusing on your values and how your partner is going against them and disrespecting who you are. It's about compromising your values. So let's pretend that there are no substances involved. There's no alcohol, there's no drugs, no prescription medications, any of the things. And you're still having the same issues in your relationship. And you're wanting to find something to blame. And again, this is understandable. However, this isn't how problems can be solved. I am fully aware that substances amplify behaviors, but they aren't the cause and they aren't an excuse. The pain is still real and it impacts you, substance or not. So why does society focus so much on substances instead of behaviors? Let's discuss this real quick. Substances are tangible. They're visible. It makes it easier to blame because they can be named, they can be moved, they can be removed, it can be regulated. But behaviors like manipulation, dishonesty, emotional withdrawal, gaslighting, unequal partnership, sometimes avoidance, these are more subtle. It's harder to measure, and it often goes unnoticed until too much damage has been done. You can't see the damage with your eyes, so we don't think too much about it. And society tends to look for quick solutions. They've tried banning or regulating substances instead of looking at why people need to escape to begin with. Substances are easier to track. If someone relapses, it's visible. Problematic behaviors can fly under the radar even after the substance has been removed. It's so much easier to say alcohol is the problem or the drugs are the problem than it is to acknowledge that the behavior, the manipulation, the dishonesty, the emotional withdrawal, the gaslighting, the unequal partnerships, maybe avoidance, which I'm going to do an episode on avoidance soon because some wheelies feel like they are avoiding like their partners, but it's not the case. It's different. Anyway. All of these behaviors can still occur even in sobriety. And society thinks like if we can get them sober, everything will be okay, ignoring the emotional and relational dysfunction that continues even in sobriety. And they even ignore the impact that these behaviors have on those around them. It also places the addict in a victim role, like they have a disease, and it shifts the focus away from the damage that their behaviors have caused. And that can minimize the experience of family members and spouses. And in traditional models, like 12-step programs, they often emphasize that substance is the core problem and that the behavior is sometimes treated as secondary. Something that will resolve once sobriety is achieved. And this just perpetuates the idea that the substance is the enemy and not the deeper behavioral patterns. Programs focus heavily on sobriety dates and then the abstinence, which can give the illusion that the person is better as soon as the substance is removed. But in reality, y'all, emotional maturity, dishonesty, the manipulation might still exist even if they're sober. And then family members are often told to be patient and that recovery takes time. ignoring the fact that some of the behaviors like lying, gaslighting, manipulation may not disappear just because the person is sober. And I hate telling people to be patient, and I've done it before because that's what I had to do in my relationship. However, I saw a lot of changes very quickly after rehab. It's up to you if you want to be patient or not. That's a whole other episode in itself. But focusing on behaviors requires accountability. Holding people accountable for manipulative or harmful behaviors, regardless of addiction, can feel uncomfortable. It's fucking hard. And society tends to shy away from this discomfort and focuses on the more tangible symptom, which is the alcohol or the substance. And many families hold on to the myth that if the substance is removed, everything will improve, hoping that once they get sober, the relationship will heal. But oftentimes, sobriety reveals that the deeper relational and behavioral issues that they were just masked by the addiction. We've had episodes on dry drunk syndrome, and that refers to those who are sober but continue to have these behaviors, and they're still, problematic, and they're still harming people just like they were in active addiction. And it underscores the idea that removing the substance isn't enough. Like, emotional and behavioral changes are also required. It's a lot of work. And to truly address addiction and support families, society has got to look beyond the substance and into the deeper patterns that cause harm, the behaviors. The behaviors outlast the substance. Like I've said before, even if someone is sober, they can be controlling, they can be manipulative, they can be, emotionally unavailable, and that's going to cause damages in the relationships. True recovery involves more than just abstinence. It's emotional maturity, it's empathy, it's accountability, it's even, relational healing. And when we shift the focus from the substance to the behavior, society could empower partners and family members to set healthy boundaries and make informed decisions instead of endlessly waiting for sobriety to be the magic solution. So this perspective also reclaims the narrative for the spouse and families of addicts, recognizing that their experience matters too. Your experience matters too. The behavior, not just the substance use, defines the health of a relationship. It's just a mask. I've said it before, it's just a cover. There's so much deeper issues going. There's just so much more going on beneath the surface than the substance use. And a lot of spouses believe that the substance is the problem, and they think, if they just stop drinking or using, everything will get better. And this is going to offer a sense of hope that sobriety will fix everything and that the relationship will return to normal. But the idea that the behavioral problems could persist even in sobriety is really, really hard for people to accept, because then it suggests that the relationship might still require tough decisions. It's easier to blame the substance than confront the possibility that the person's behaviors might remain even without it. And then focusing on the substance gives spouses a tangible goal to work towards, getting the addict sober. This feels more manageable than addressing the behaviors that can take years to unlearn, even with recovery. Y'all, I'm talking years. It does not happen quickly. And it's easier to believe that sobriety is the finish line rather than facing the reality that emotional healing and behavioral changes take time. The hope for sobriety keeps partners focused on something that feels achievable. It's easier. That's what our society does. We try to go out the easy way out. And substance use is obvious and easy to detect. You know when people have been drinking or using. But again, the behaviors can be subtle and confusing, and we may struggle to identify these behaviors or convince ourselves that they're not as bad as it feels. We minimize the situation, especially if our partner is dismissing or denying all of these things that we are bringing to their attention. And when we focus on the substance, it gives us a concrete problem to fight, instead of trying to make sense of the behaviors that feel invisible or harder to name. Again, it's just easier to focus on the substance. Focusing on the behavior can force us to confront uncomfortable realities. Like, even if they get sober, they will still treat me badly. Or do I want to stay in a relationship where I feel neglected or disrespected? And these questions are scary, y'all. These are scary because they challenge the hope that sobriety will save the relationship. It's emotionally easier to wait for the substance problem to go away than to face the possibility that the relationship may not survive even if the addiction ends. Society and traditional recovery programs often tell spouses, just help them get sober and everything will be okay. And this message encourages them to focus only on sobriety instead of holding the addict accountable for their behavior. And then we may feel guilty if we focus on the behaviors and set boundaries as if we're not being supportive enough. And then society tends to excuse bad behavior by framing it as a symptom of addiction, which makes us feel like we have to endure it until sobriety happens. Y'all know how I feel about framing these as a symptom of addiction. The pain is still there. The hurt is still happening. You're still being impacted, addiction or not. And then focusing on the substance feels less personal. They drink because they're an addict or an alcoholic. But the behavioral problems like, the lying, the gaslighting, manipulating, the emotional neglect, all of that feels directed at the partner. And it's harder, to dismiss. It's emotionally easier to blame the substance than to confront the painful truth that your partner's behavior is hurting you. And if partners recognize that the behavior, not just the substance use, is the real problem, we might have to set boundaries or even leave the relationship. And that's really, really difficult to come to terms with. These decisions are painful. And especially when you feel like, you've been invested years in the hopes that things will improve. And it's easier to focus on the substance and cling to the possibility of change than to face the reality that, we might need to walk away to protect ourselves and our children. Focusing on the substance gives spouses a sense of control and hope, but it's going to keep you stuck in a cycle of waiting for change. The truth is behavior, the negative behavior, the things that are harming you, they matter more, just as much or more than whether the person gets sober. Sobriety isn't the finish line. It's just the beginning of addressing deeper issues. So partners, you can regain your control by shifting your focus to behaviors and asking, am I being treated with respect, honesty, and care, whether or not they're sober? This is going to empower you to make decisions based on your values and needs rather than waiting for the substance to disappear. So how do we as partners learn how to shift our perspective to focus on your values and how they're being compromised instead of focusing on the substance? Many of us become so consumed with managing the chaos of addiction that we lose sight of our own needs, our own boundaries, our own values. We lose sight of ourselves. So what do we do about it? Life should revolve around what you stand for, not around managing others' behavior or sobriety. And, let's re-examine your core values. This is a reflection exercise. And remember I said that you might want to journal for this episode. What do you value most in a relationship? Trust, honesty, respect, emotional safety? How does staying in this dynamic align or conflict with those values? We often realize that our focus on the substance has led us to tolerate behaviors that violate our values. And these questions are going to shift the conversation from, is he drinking? To, does this relationship align with who I am and what I believe? We have a boundary series podcast that we recorded, I think it was over a year ago, that digs deeper into your values. And we also have a module on this in our Independently Strong course that helps you figure out what you want in this life and how to set boundaries based on your values and, live your life authentically. So when you're in a relationship with someone struggling with addiction, it's easy to start giving up little pieces of yourself just to keep things going. You might let things slide or accept behaviors that go against what you believe in because you're focused on surviving the situation, or you're focused on saying, well, if they would just get sober, things would be great. Or if they just went to therapy, things would be great. Or if you're starting many of your sentences with if they, you're focusing too much on the other person and you're depending on them to fix your problems. And over time, all these small compromises add up, leaving you confused about who you really are. So staying in survival mode, just trying to get through each day, can make you give up more than just small comforts. It can cause you to sacrifice your sense of self and your most important values like honesty, respect, safety, peace of mind, whatever it is. There's a whole list of values out there. We have it in our program. You can Google it. I mean, there's like hundreds of them that you can pick through to figure out, who you are and what you want to live by. So I want you to take a moment and reflect. I want you to reflect and write down the answers to these questions. What things did I stop doing for myself? What values, maybe like honesty, respect, or fairness, did I compromise to keep things going? When did I stop standing up for the things I believe in? This exercise is going to help you see where you've lost pieces of yourself and how much you've given away just to hold things together. And once you spot these areas, you can start to reconnect with your values and make better choices for yourself moving forward. And it's also important to recognize when behaviors like manipulation, emotional neglect, gaslighting, all the things force you to go against your values. Even if your partner becomes sober, these behaviors still matter and should not be ignored. Recovery isn't just about quitting the substances. It's also about making sure both people are treated with respect. There's so much more that goes into it. By recognizing the cost of your compromises, you're taking the first step towards getting back to the things that matter most, your values. And from there, you can start making decisions that align with who you want to be rather than just surviving the situation. And many of us believe that it's our responsibility to fix or rescue the person struggling with addiction or whatnot. And it's easy to think if I just support them more, love them harder, or try to control their drinking or using, things will get better. But the truth is, you can't fix someone else, no matter how much effort you put in. The real shift is understanding that your job isn't to save them. Your job is to focus on yourself, protecting your values, your happiness, and living the life that you want. When you're constantly focusing on saving your partner, you're going to lose sight of your own life. You're going to sacrifice things you care about and let go of your values. And then you're going to get stuck in this never-ending cycle of trying to fix someone who might not even be ready for change. So shift into, instead of being a helper, shift into being a leader in your own life. And that means letting go of trying to fix them, focusing on what you can control, your decisions, your happiness, your boundaries, your reactions, and living in alignment with your values no matter what they do. Ask yourself, what would my life look like if I stopped trying to save them and focused on leading myself? If I stopped waiting for them to change, what could I do right now to take care of myself? This is going to allow you to put yourself first without guilt. It also makes it easier to set boundaries and say, this behavior isn't okay because you're choosing to honor yourself. It's common to think, if they get sober, I'll stay. If they don't, I'll leave. But that leaves you stuck waiting on them to change instead of making your decisions based on whether or not they quit using. So let's ask yourself this. Does this relationship allow me to be the person I want to be? Is this relationship helping me live according to my values, like trust, respect, and peace? This way, your choices are based on what you need, not what they do. Whether you choose to stay or leave becomes a matter of whether the relationship feels healthy for you, not just whether they stop drinking or using. You can't control someone else. You can't control their recovery, but you can control how you live your life. Shifting from the helper to leader is going to help you reclaim your energy and focus to where it belongs, on building the life you deserve. Whether you stay in the relationship or leave, the focus becomes, am I staying true to my values? Am I living the life I want, or am I waiting for someone else to change? When you shift your mindset this way, you're going to make peace for better decisions. Decisions based on what's best for you, not on waiting for your partner to be different. So many partners fall into the trap of thinking if they get sober, things will finally get better. And we've talked about this a lot. But the truth is, you can't wait for someone else's sobriety to decide if you'll be happy. What if the change you hope for never happens? We need to detach from that outcome, whether or not the addict gets sober, and instead focus on how you want to live now. The goal is to stop living in limbo, hoping for a future that might never come. Happiness comes from aligning with your own values, not waiting for someone else to change. So use this reminder to stay grounded. It's a mantra that you can have. I cannot control the outcome of someone else's recovery, but I can control whether I live a life that reflects my values. So imagine building a house on top of unstable ground because you hope the foundation will improve over time. And you ask, well, what happens if it doesn't? What if it stays unstable forever? This same idea applies in relationships. If your entire life depends on the addict changing, you're building your life on unstable ground. But if you base your choices on your values and needs, your life will feel stable no matter what they do. And we often feel stuck because we are so caught up in the paralyzing what if thoughts. We had an episode on the what ifs, but what if they finally quit drinking and I gave up too soon? What if I leave and everything gets better right after I'm gone? And these kind of what if questions are going to keep you trapped in uncertainty, and you're going to be hoping for change that might not ever come. And this mindset makes it harder for you to make decisions or move forward because you're always waiting for the perfect outcome that may never arrive. So let's flip the script a bit. Instead of asking what if questions that keep you stuck, let's ask questions that shift the focus back to your own choices and happiness. So let's reframe them. What if I save myself from years of pain by living according to my values? What if I choose to prioritize my happiness, whether they recover or not? These new questions are going to help you focus on what you can control. Your own behavior, your decisions, instead of waiting for them to change. You can start building a life that reflects your values. Many of us feel that being loyal means staying no matter what, even if, you're suffering deeply or your partner shows no signs of change. And you tell yourself, if I love them, I should stick it out until they get better. But this version of loyalty can cause real harm if it makes you sacrifice your values, your own health, and happiness just to stay in a relationship. True healthy loyalty means staying committed to a relationship without losing yourself. Many of us lose ourselves in these relationships. And loyalty to someone else should never come at the expense of your own values. So when does loyalty become too costly? I want you to take a moment to reflect on how much you've been sacrificing in the name of loyalty. Ask yourself, what am I giving up or compromising to stay loyal in this relationship? Do I owe this relationship more loyalty than I owe myself and my well-being? This is going to help you see clearly if you're holding on too tightly, even though it's hurting you. It allows you to recognize that you deserve to be loyal to yourself first. So let's think of a relationship like being inside a burning building. If you stay inside because you feel committed to the building, you're going to get hurt in the process. Staying committed doesn't make you a hero if you have the option to walk away and save yourself. Commitment shouldn't mean sacrificing yourself. True commitment means knowing when it's time to leave, to protect yourself and live a life aligned with your values. So loyalty to someone else should never come at the cost of your own health. It should never come at the cost of you. You can care about someone without destroying yourself in the process, and staying committed to a relationship is only meaningful if it also allows you to honor your values and take care of yourself. So ask yourself, am I staying out of love or just because I feel guilty or afraid to leave? So let's talk about community real quick. A lot of us feel isolated when we are caught in the struggle of loving somebody who is struggling with addiction. And that's why having the right kind of community is so important. A healthy community should offer more than just tips for coping with the addict's behavior. It should encourage personal growth and remind you that you deserve the life to live fully and authentically. We have an independently strong community. We have a TUFO community where you can see examples of others who have made hard choices. Whether that be staying or leaving, they are now thriving because they chose to align their lives with their values. And this kind of support helps you feel validated and empowers you to make the right choices for yourselves. So when you've spent so much time taking care of someone, it's easy to feel guilty for focusing on yourself. Many of us believe that putting our needs first is selfish. I'm going to get into self-care here real quick. But the truth is that self-compassion and self-care is not selfish. It's necessary. You cannot keep pouring your energy into someone else without taking care of yourself first. You matter just as much as anyone else. Taking care of yourself doesn't mean that you love anyone less. It just means that you understand that your needs deserve attention too. Remind yourself, taking care of myself isn't selfish. It's the only way I can live a life that reflects who I truly am. This affirmation can help shift your mindset, reminding you that you deserve the same kindness and care that you offer to others. And when you prioritize your needs, you're not being selfish. You're being responsible for yourself. It's like the oxygen mask. Think of the instructions when you get on an airplane. Put your own oxygen mask on first before helping others. This is because if you run out of air, you won't be able to help anyone else. This applies in relationships too. You can't support others if you're exhausted, stressed, or overwhelmed. You can't parent. You can't do any of that unless you're putting yourself first. That means that you're going to be in a better place to offer help if and when it's appropriate. Not everybody is going to get help or support. But just prioritizing yourself isn't selfish, y'all. It's essential. You deserve the same level of care that you give others. And when you take care of yourself, you're going to be prepared to handle challenges in a healthier way. So let's do an exercise on visioning your future. Get your journal out again. Keep it out, guys. What would a life aligned with my values look like? How would it feel to reclaim my authenticity and live with integrity? This is going to help you shift your focus from fear of change to the possibility of growth and fulfillment. It helps you imagine what's possible for you, whether or not your partner changes, and reminds you that you deserve a meaningful, authentic life. Shift that focus onto you. You deserve that. And living according to your values is going to create long-term peace. It's going to create clarity. It's going to create purpose. And it's going to feel scary at first. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel off. You're going to feel like, what the hell am I doing here? But when you make decisions based on what's right for you, rather than waiting on someone else to change, you're opening the door to a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. And you're showing your children how to live a more authentic and fulfilling life. Ask yourself, am I building a life that reflects who I am? How will it feel to make decisions based on my values, no matter what happens with my partner? This way, your happiness isn't tied to someone else's actions. Instead, you'll find meaning and fulfillment by living true to yourself. Guys, this is what I mean by focusing on behaviors. When you understand your values and what you stand for, you're able to recognize what behaviors go against those values. Focusing on the substances will drive you fucking crazy. I did not focus on substances. I focused on behaviors and how they didn't align with my values. That's why change was made. Focusing on the substance will keep you stuck for much longer than necessary. And I know it seems as though I won't shut up about behaviors over substances, but I believe this is a societal issue that really needs to be addressed. And I won't stop trying to unravel the conditioning. I'm going to keep talking about it. So that's all I have for this week. Until next time, I'm Paige. Bye.